Hello, everybody. We're a few seconds late here, but we're kind of moving stuff around. Uh, Welcome once again from one side to the other. I am Kristoff N. Chester. Um, Give me a second here to let people get in. Hello, Mr. Bishop. Tonight we'll be discussing cryptids seen in war times, the literal horrors of war. Um, yeah. Isn't that an inviting and fun topic, right? Boy, howdy. I remember a few weeks ago when I was like, nobody's going to like this when we were talking about cannibals. It was hilarious watching the bishop cringe. But anyway, no, tonight we're going to be talking about, well, 90% of these are cryptids, of course. There is one that we're going to get out of the way first that's more of an urban legend than a cryptid, actually. And like I said, I'm going to give a few seconds here for... Hold on, well, actually, I'm going to make sure that my frickin' feed is working, actually. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I see everything. All right. Yeah, no, I accidentally, when I was trying to separate the chat on my screen, I ended up actually closing the studio completely out. But anyway, all right, so we're going to give everyone, we're going to let everyone just, catch up when they get here. But the first one we're going to talk about, like I said, it's more of an urban legend than an actual creature or a specific thing. Although there's so many stories around it, it pretty much is it's in that category, I guess is the right way to put it. Oh, hi Tara, my sister showed up. See, I know he's somewhere. I know he's alive. Just wondering where Sean is. Mr. Bishop, you appear to be confused. What's funny as I think about it, and it's like anyone who just listens to the stream, every now and then I randomly will just mention Mr. Bishop and the Bishop, and I wonder how often they get those confused. Like, I think I called you Mr. Bishop one time, but anyway, they're not your dogs. Anyway, the first one, again, it's more of an urban legend. There he is. I knew it. He's starting early. Just you wait, Sean. Just you wait. Oh, hi, Mom. Alrighty. So anyway, like I said, this is more of an urban legend. It's had a few different names throughout wars. See, Mr. Bishop, my sister gets it. They're mine. They're famine and gluttony. They're my dogs. Okay? You know what? You read the Necronomicon. You unlock dark powers to make undead dogs. You can have your own. Okay? They're mine. Anyway, as I was saying, I lost my train of thought. This is going to be a great show tonight. I can already tell. I can feel it. But, like I said, they had a few different names, but in general, they're referred to as the Endless Tunnels, or the Endless Trenches, as some people have called them. And they pretty much date back as far as, the World Wars. I mean, maybe even earlier than that. World War I, of course, was infamous for its trench warfare, which we'll be talking about later on tonight. Don't worry. If you're a fan of World War I, they'll be back, I promise. But anyway, the Endless Tunnels have always existed, kind of. They were most talked about, and where I first heard of them is the Vietnam and the Korean War. Wars, I should say. Um, Tunnel warfare was very popular. World War II, kind of, they had similar stuff with the infamous sewer fighting that happened in Stalingrad and France. But anyway, here's the idea of what is the endless trench or the endless tunnels. Um, they are infinitely spiraling tunnels. I could imagine some people being like, so kind of like the back rooms. Well, yeah, but they actually have a measure of creativity to them. The endless tunnels are truly a nightmarish thing, and they've always existed. As long as there has been modern warfare, there has been stories of these tunnels. Soldiers claim that they just found passages in tunnels that they dug that they didn't know about. And there's all kinds of horrible things supposedly that you see in these tunnels when you go into them. A lot of soldiers, again, especially in the Korean and Vietnam War, they'd be found and they would be like trying to get out of their clothes, claiming that it's hot, it's really hot, they're burning up, which gave rise to some legends that the endless tunnels were created because soldiers fighting this war dug too close to hell. And a lot of soldiers claimed it get very hot. They heard sounds of movement around them. They heard people panting or crying. Mole people, yeah, I've heard stories of mole people, but those aren't tied to the well. Put a pin in that, dear sister. I will take no back rooms. This is a warning shot, Sean. This is a warning shot. If you want to approve of that 8-year-old written up creepypasta stuff, you start a show and you can praise whatever you want. Okay, sorry, I don't like the back rooms. I've already passed puberty. Anyway, back to I made that one for you, Sean. I made that one for you. But anyway, like I said, a very common claim is that they would hear people crying. There's people sobbing or hyperventilating or screaming even in these tunnels, and it's very hot and it's dark. And here's the thing that I think is actually really interesting is in the different wars, they actually explained it differently. Don't ask me to say what they called them in Korea because I can't speak a lick of Korean, but basically the story in the Korean War was that in case you're unaware, and I'm hoping you're not, but if you are, the Korean War was actually a civil war. It was Korea versus itself, and we and other countries decided to join in, basically. Now, the Koreans had this mythology that blood spilled by your own kin or your own countrymen is particularly cursed. It is very powerful for the darker sort of arts and mysticism and things like that. And so when all these Korean people fought in the war and they killed each other, their blood soaked into the ground and cursed it. And then, soldiers come along and dig tunnels under the ground, and the tunnels became warped and twisted. A kind of reflection of the evil and tragedy that was done on the soil. Now, in Vietnam, there's a slightly different ghost story about the endless tunnels. In Vietnam, and watch me be getting this backwards, and it's actually the other way around. But either way, in Vietnam, I believe it was, they kind of had this tradition that the earth is for the living to walk on, and it's for the dead to be under. Under the ground is no place for anyone alive. That's for the dead. And so when the Vietnamese and the American and other countries were digging these tunnels, we were intruding literally into the land of the dead. And so supposedly the endless tunnels were actually being dug by the dead who were angry that we disturbed their sacred grounds. Now, there's also versions of the endless tunnels in the Desert Storm, the invasion of Afghanistan, and also what was the second war? Iraqi freedom, the Iraqi freedom or whatever it's called. I forget the official call. You know what I'm talking about. Our generation's war in Iraq. Yeah, it was Iraq. I always worried about that because I always get Iraq and Iran mixed up. I know they're completely different countries, but they have such similar names. Okay, get off my back. I'm amazed that Sean takes offense to me saying the back rooms are dumb, but he's not going to take the chance to jump on me about Iraq and Iran. Maybe he just needs to recover from the Ancient Aliens meme or something. Anyway, but in Iraq and the Afghanistan wars, they kind of changed, and they were Iraqi Freedom. I think it was like Operation Iraqi Freedom or something like that. But anyway, the tunnels kind of changed because the insurgents and the Taliban or Al Qaeda, I'm not sure if they're the same thing or they were working together or what, but basically they were cave fighters. They took to hiding in the Afghan mountains and the Iraqi mountains, which are extremely intricate and pretty bleeping hard to actually get into. In fact, some of those caves in those mountains go so far down that so little light actually gets in there, to the point that a lot of night vision software and equipment doesn't work, because night vision and stuff like that, it doesn't just suddenly make light. What it does is it enhances the light that the lenses already capture. And if there's no light at all in said cave, then there's nothing for the night vision goggles to enhance, and so you're still walking in pitch blackness. And you guessed it, once again, just like in Korea, just like in Vietnam, just like in the trenches of World War I, just like the sewers in World War II, you have soldiers who claimed that they found tunnels and passages that were unaccounted for, and it just seemed like they went on for infinity, and there was, again, people crying, they heard moaning, they saw and felt movement, things like that. And once again, yep, it got hot. It feels warm in those tunnels, apparently. And the interesting thing about the endless tunnels, and again, the reason that I say they're kind of more of an urban legend than a cryptid, because we actually have an explanation for them. I'm sure most of the people in the chat probably have already figured it out. What are the endless tunnels? The truth is that they are a combination of lack of sunlight, tension, stress, paranoia, these things. The reason that soldiers claimed they could hear people breathing heavy or crying or screaming is because they were hearing themselves. They were echoing inside the tunnels, and they were so on edge, thinking that, an enemy could literally be around the corner, or heaven forbid, digging through the wall right now, that they literally scared themselves with the echo of their own breathing and the sound of movement. Now, the heat, because that's something that everyone goes, wait, doesn't it get cold underground? It does get cold underground, but you also raise your core body temperature when you become panicked. It's also something that happens with hypothermia. You'll see a lot of people who go mountain climbing, and their bodies are found, but for some reason they took their clothes off. Well, yeah, because panic and hypothermia both cause your core body temperature to heat up. So from your perspective, it's getting hotter. And that's why a lot of the soldiers would be trying to take off their gear and saying that it's too hot and things like that. But yeah, no. Physically, no, there's no... Well, I'm pretty sure there's no infinite tunnels actually sprawling underneath Korea and Vietnam or in Afghanistan and things like that. I hope not, because that honestly sounds terrifying, personally. I mean, seriously, that sounds horrible. But yeah, these soldiers basically, with the power of their own mind, made a literal type of hell for themselves. And it's absolutely tragic and horrible. Especially because, and I know this will sound cliche, for some of those men and women, they're still there in their minds. This is a very real problem. It's a very real thing. PTSD is not a boogeyman. It is not some, hashtag. It's a very real, very terrifying mental affliction. And any soldier who mentions the endless tunnels suffers from that condition. Something that annoys me about social media is everyone sits there and they talk about it so much. War is hell. Yes, war is literally hell on earth. I'm an atheist. I don't even believe in hell, and I'll say, yes, war is hell. There is nothing as evil or horrifying. I consider myself a professional horror writer, and I confess I will always kind of be begrudging, because no matter how good I do at my profession and my job, nothing I ever will create will be anywhere near as horrifying as war itself is. My great uncle Paul, he told me one time, because everyone jokes about death takes a vacation. Death takes a vacation on Christmas. Death does this. War is when death works overtime. Yeah, don't go down rabbit holes. But like I was saying though, that's one of the reasons I always get so annoyed with social media is you have these kids who cry that they have PTSD and stuff like that, and it's like, over what? Over what, you entitled little child with an iPhone? Actually, we're gonna back off from the horrors of the endless tunnels. We actually celebrated our second anniversary here on the channel. June 1st was the day that we put up The Light in the Graveyard. It was about admittedly a day late, but we ourselves got our newest episode, Operation Sandbar. Operation Sandbar, which is fitting with our show tonight, actually a military story. I know, the horror, right, Tara? The sheer unadulterated terror of being grounded and having rules in your life is equivalent to entering the endless tunnels. It's so unappreciated to be an influencer. You need to talk to a tunnel rat. Uncle Harry. See, I always remember him being called Uncle Paul. For the people who aren't watching the chat, my sister is pointing out that my Uncle Paul's first name was Harry. I don't know why, but I always thought his name was Paul. I always referred to him as Uncle Paul. But anyway. Sorry, I completely lost train of thought. Sorry. But yeah, our second anniversary was just a few days ago. We have this new story. After the show, go check it out if you haven't already. But we're going to get back to what we're talking about. And actually, speaking of my dear Uncle Paul and also my grandfather, I have a couple here from the Vietnam War. Vietnam was just nasty, man. Like I said, Vietnam had the endless tunnels too. Really? They had a special patch badge for the tunnel rats? That's really cool. I'd love to see one of those. Mr. Bishop in the chat, did you serve? Are you a soldier? Because I remember when we were talking about raiding Area 51, he was the one who actually answered about vehicle-mounted machine guns and stuff like that. Well, I'll resume talking while he's answering, I guess. Anyway, the Vietnam War, man, boy howdy. And maybe that's because I grew up in a household, with a Vietnam veteran. I'm a little bit more familiar with it, but boy howdy. Everything that could have gone wrong with that war, am I right? Not that anything can really go... not that really anything can go right with a war, I guess. I mean, war is basically when you've done everything wrong. We'll try to find it. Well, thank you, Mr. Bishop. You will try to find this patch. But anyway, yeah, no, there were all kinds of strange creatures seen in the Vietnam War. A famous one, and one that the bishop was actually really excited to talk about, is what they called the bull eater. Now, the bull eater is kind of an interesting one because it's a cryptid. It's a gigantic snake. There's some conflict about when and where it was actually seen. Basically, it's one photograph, and we'll get to it in a second here. But there's some people who say it's from 1964 in Vietnam, and other people say it's actually taken from the Congo in 1959 during a revolution they had over there. But the bishop has actually managed to get us a dramatic reenactment of the incident, and we're going to show it to you here now, and then I'll explain a little bit more about it. So, Mr. Bishop. Yeah, so, okay. That is literally what happened. Allegedly, that is what actually happened. This was there we go. So, this is the photograph in question. Oh, hi, Connie. Glad you made it. I hope you don't mind snakes. So this is what some people refer to as the bull eater, or as the Congo snake, depending on when you believe this picture was taken. The photographers claimed that this serpent was about 100 feet long and was actually able to rise 10 feet up off the ground. And in some stories, they claim that the snake actually snapped at the helicopter they were in. Others say that it just hissed. Was not in service by choice. Oh, that's dark. Oh, you love snakes, Connie. Well, good. We love snakes too. I always joke that I'd love to have a pet snake, but I'd be afraid of taking care of it because they actually take a lot of good care. It looks like it could be an anaconda. Yes, anacondas, that's what some people claim. The thing is, though, anacondas don't get to 100 feet long, and they also can't rise up 10 feet off the ground. And again, in Vietnam, they have a legend of a cryptid that they call the bull eater, which is a gigantic snake. Now, of course, they also have very big snakes in Vietnam. You also have very big snakes in Africa. And yes, in the Congo region. So there's this big argument over when was this photo actually taken and where, because this isn't like, which street did you see it on? This is, one in the Congo and the other 5 years later in the jungles of Vietnam. But both regions have their own versions of giant cryptid serpents. So, I mean, it could be either or. But it's a very famous cryptid, actually. People have tried to analyze this photo over and over again, and there really isn't anything that indicates it's fake or fabricated. Me, myself, personally, I can't really see the terrain well enough to say if it looks like it's in the Congo or Vietnam. If we can bring... There we go. So there's a lot of different talks about, well, how big could the snake really be? Could it really be 100 feet long? But if you look at it, we see what they call a termite mound there with the red circle over it. There's the snake just underneath that supposed mound. And keep in mind, those mounds, termite mounds can get freaking huge. I've seen some that are like around 10, 15 feet tall, actually. Live in the ground, my ass. You can see some trees up there in the top right. There's all kinds of like big rocks up in the top left there. Yeah, no, this shot, it does paint a pretty good picture that this is a big freaking animal. And the disturbing thing is like, some people say, oh, that's too big to possibly be real. There's no way 100, what would 100-foot snake eat? You. I'm just saying, GeoGuessr, but for big scary snakes. The scary part about it is that it's real. Yeah, I have to admit, I like snakes. I would not want to encounter one that's 100 feet long. To give you an idea of size preference, if a snake was 100 foot long, relatively speaking, a human would be the size of a mouse or a rat to it. So, yeah. The whole thing about, well, a snake couldn't be that long, there'd be nothing for it to eat. There'd be a lot of stuff for it to eat. People are the right size, crocodiles, lions, hyenas, jackals in Africa. In Vietnam, you have apes of all kinds. There's all kinds of monkeys and stuff that live in that region. Cattle. Cattle's a big thing in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken. See, that's the one problem is my grandfather didn't like to talk about the war or Vietnam itself. He always said that, because I was a little kid, by the way, when he was alive, and he always said that there was nothing that a child needed to know about war, especially that war in particular. Yeah, deer. Yeah, there's deer in Vietnam. AWOL soldiers. They may not be AWOL by choice, to be fair, if they encounter a 100-foot long snake. They might not, yeah. Sean, I have to say, I don't agree with you on that, actually. Being big doesn't make you easy to find. You have to keep in mind that both the Congo and Vietnam, in all due respect to the people who live there, are not the most developed regions. There's a lot of rural, untamed, for lack of a better term, untamed regions where something very big could easily hide. I'm trying to think of a good example. What was it? Was it the gorilla? Was it gorillas in Africa? They were only confirmed, a couple, maybe in the late 1800s, actually.
Late 1800s, 1920s, yeah.
Yeah. And how long had the rest of the world been interacting with Africa by then? And it wasn't until the 1800s, maybe the 1900s, that we actually confirmed that there are these humongous apes who live in huge family tribes. 100-foot long snake wouldn't be that difficult, especially if it's a freak. Bigfoot, yeah. Bigfoot's another great example.
My dad got the picture of that tunnel rat patch.
Oh, really? What is that? That is really, and that's the Vietnamese, the Vietnam War tunnel rats patch. See, I'm just gonna say it. That is from I'm way over here and you were there. That's just badass looking. I love military patches. I would love to have that one. That would be really cool. Have that one and like just keep it in display when I take my Skaven to play. What is that? What? Oh, yeah, this little guy. This adorable little wooden snake that I found. Did I find it or did you find it? I don't know where this came. I know I painted it.
You found it, and yeah, you painted it.
Yeah, a little wooden snake.
It actually shows up on the...
It does, actually. I'm kind of surprised because it's green. Have him. Here, you can hang out on my hat. See how long before he falls. Anyway, though. But yeah, no. especially if it's actually not a species, it could be a mutant. It could be a mutation. Giantism is a thing in pretty much all creatures. Any creature could develop giantism or dwarfism. Yeah, being able to go underground is another way it could hide. I mean, hell, what are they? The thing that inspired Tremors, Mongolian deathworms. They're supposed to be like what, 8 feet long, about as long as a human is tall. I think is the legend. Yeah, and they supposedly live underground. There's so many places. Hold on a second here. Hold on, Mr. Bishop. You actually have a tunnel rat patch. You have that patch. And you will give that to me for an undead dog. Is this the deal that I am understanding you making here, Mr. Bishop? Because see, my grandfather was the opposite. He wasn't a tunnel rat. He worked on he was a mechanic actually. He worked with like choppers and planes and stuff like that. I could probably talk about him alone. I mean, I'm sure everyone in the chat is like, I'm sure everyone in the chat is like, oh yeah, sure. Everyone's grandfather from the military is a war hero. No. He actually received a Bronze Star. He was a actual war hero. But he was up in the air. He wasn't a tunnel rat. He wasn't with the tunnel stuff. You'll have to find his sword. Okay, you know what? I'll make you a deal. Because I know I'll open up the Necronomicon. I'll talk to the breeder. I can get you a Famine. I can get you a dog just like Famine. If you get me that tunnel rat patch. You get me you give me a tunnel rat patch, I will get you your own Famine. But anyway, let's get back to it. But yeah, as far as what was the Congo snake or the bull eater as they call him in Vietnam, it could be a lot of things. It could have been a freak of nature. It could be that there are just snakes that big who live there. Yeah, it wouldn't be that hard for a creature to hide, honestly, especially in parts of the world like that are mostly not, built over and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it. There's a lot of room for that thing to live. I mean, there is. Personally, I hope it's a genetic freak of nature. Because the idea of 100-foot-long snake is bad enough. I don't want to live in a world where there's a whole population of them. All right. We have a deal. That a deal? All right. Keep us informed with that, Mr. Bishop. We'll get you your own Famine if you can get me a tunnel rat patch. Put it in a frame or something. I'm outside. I don't have anywhere to put it. Because, I mean, obviously it'd be kind of disrespectful to, like, put it on my jacket or something. Because, spoiler warning, I'm not a tunnel rat myself, so. Anyway, but speaking of the Vietnam War, and like I said, a lot of weird stuff happened, actually. And a lot of tragic stuff happened, actually. Imagine that. I've actually heard people argue over which is the forgotten war, Korea or Vietnam. Honestly, they both kind of are. Like, people don't glorify or talk about those wars like they do about like World War II or One. Yeah, a lot of people are kind of content for those wars to. They're not quaint historical quotations, as to say. Which is unfair. Also, real quick, I reserve the right to slap anyone who calls it the Vietnam conflict. It was a war. Good men and women died. Okay? I don't give a damn who won or lost or who was embarrassed. I don't care. It was a war. Period. There is no discussion about this. Sorry. That's just something that bugs the crap out of me. Anyway, so bleh, if I could talk, I'd be dangerous. Another cryptid that we get from the Vietnam War, which some people say also showed up in Iraqi freedom, are what's called the night flyers. Now, the night flyers are, roughly speaking, described as being about 5 foot tall. They tend to, again, according to the people who actually saw them in Vietnam, they were described as winged women with faces like monkeys. Which I have to say has got to be one of the nastiest insults I think I've ever heard. You look like a lady with a monkey's face. A lot of people call them bat people. Because, well, yeah, a winged... Yeah, I mean, bats are technically a lesser primate, actually. A lot of people think they're rodents. Bats are not rodents. They're actually a primate. They're most closely related to... That's for you, Sean. That is for you. Gargoyles. Some people say that they are, yeah. Some say that, yeah, night flyers are a thing. Human-sized bats are actually another one of those things that they're all over the world. I mean, there was a god in South America. I think it was the Mayans worshipped, what was his name? Camazot, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Camazot, the bat god. He was like the guardian of the underworld. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Roughly 5 foot tall. Supposedly they had a very feminine shape. They were shaped like women, which always made me think, so they were like skinny? Like, do they have boobies? Bat boobies. I don't know. I've never been quite clear about what constitutes looking like a woman with a monkey face, but apparently that's what they were. And the Vietnamese themselves had legends that these creatures were actually demons who were attracted to feelings of guilt. So if you felt like you were guilty of something, these creatures would swoop around and harass you at night. And some U.S. soldiers even claimed they were attacked. Supposedly these things have very nasty, sharp talons on their feet. Because like a bat, their arms are their wings, supposedly. And so what they'll do is they'll swoop and they'll kick you in the head, basically. And what's interesting is that some people claim that they were encountered in Iraqi freedom. Or not Iraqi freedom, the invasion of Afghanistan. There's a ghost story about how there was this one cave that when U.S. forces tried to move by it, they always picked up radio interference. And so they were like, there has to be something in the cave. There has to be something in there. And so they staked it out, but they didn't find anything. Nothing was coming in or out of the cave. And so they sent men in, and they found nothing in the caves, except for the normal things you'd expect to find in caves, like guano and bat populations. And so the standing theory was actually that it was the bats, because bats use echolocation all the time, to see in the dark, basically. And the standing theory, the explanation was that there were so many bats in the cave, all using their echolocation, it disrupted the audio frequencies that the military was using. Other people claim that it wasn't the number of bats, it was the size of them. Supposedly, really big bats, the size of about a human, 5 foot tall, supposedly, yeah, their sounds are so high-pitched that they actually can disrupt other audio signals in the air. Which is, by the way, another thing that the people in Vietnam said they had problems with. Radios and stuff malfunctioning. Picking up static and other signals. Personally, me, it's like, I really hope that the radio software being used in the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraqi freedom was a little bit more intricate and powerful than the stuff we had in Vietnam. But at the same time, knowing the U.S. government, I would not be shocked if our brave men and women were still using stuff from the Vietnam War right now. Bunch of cheap such and such. My grandfather always said that a real American is someone who loves the military and hates the government. But anyway, yeah, these are supposedly very nasty creatures. The thing that I find interesting about them is that they're always described as being aggressive. These creatures on sight will attack a human, which is weird because they're a giant bat. Bats are not aggressive animals at all. In fact, actually, a bigger problem with bats is that they are very curious of humans. There's a whole big misconception. Oh, bats want to get tangled in your hair. No, usually they're just swooping by and getting a look at you because, I mean, you're pretty weird looking for a bat. Some people even will tell you that a lot of the bigger bats, like flying foxes, are very friendly, actually. And people claim that they were attacked by a bat that was literally just trying to interact with them and figure out what they were. If you couldn't tell, we love bats here. Which is why I keep saying that night flyers don't make sense to me. I don't get... They're big bats. I know, I wish I could get it. They're big bats, but they don't act like bats. They're very, like I said, I know I'm repeating myself a little. They're very aggressive. And some people say they're strong. Like, really strong. Like, there are some stories that they can actually pick up a person. Swoop down, grab them with their claws, and actually pick them up. I'd almost compare it to Jaws. You know what I mean? Like, everyone knows sharks from the movie Jaws. But if you actually know about sharks, you'll realize Jaws is like the most factually wrong movie in the history of all mankind. In fact, the original author of the book it's based on publicly apologized and disavowed the original book Jaws because he learned everything he wrote was wrong about them. So night flyers are like the Jaws of bats. But like I said, and I'll bring this up actually now. We actually here at the Vagrancy Horror are very good friends and advocates for Bat World Society. Sanctuary, Bat World Sanctuary. This is a picture of Poppy, a bat that I actually sponsored. Tragically was abused most of her life, was rescued and was able to live out a happy life at the sanctuary. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, the bishop also has a bat, Cornelius, who's actually named after Cornelius the centurion from the Bible. And our kobold who lives down the hall, his bat, he actually sponsors a bat named the Captain. So we always make jokes about that. But yeah, night flyers are bizarre to me because they don't act like bats at all. Bats are not monsters. They're not scary. They're not evil. They're not aggressive at the very least. And yeah, we love them here. There we go. Yeah, batworld.org. If you got the chance, oh yeah, that's right. Sean, you've sponsored a bat too. You had Orkin, Orkin the Warrior. I remember him. Orkin was a really cool bat too. Yeah. And they're still a thing. You know, you can get your own bat. Obviously, we're not sponsored by a charity organization, but we are advocates for them. We absolutely love them there. They do incredible, great work. After the show, go check them out. You could have a bat of your own. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to say that because the night flyers, I don't get it. Physically, I see it. A human-sized bat. I mean, there are people-sized apes. Why couldn't there be a people-sized bat? But then they don't act like bats. They're nothing like bats. You know what I mean? So I don't understand that legend. I don't understand that cryptid. It's one of those weird things. It's like it all makes sense except for the stories about them themselves. Like the creature makes perfect sense, but they don't act like bats. So I don't know what they are or why they would be so aggressive. I don't know what that is. But anyway, speaking of oddly sized animals, we have one more strange monster from the Vietnam War. And this one I find interesting because the US government doesn't mention night flyers. They don't mention big bats in Afghanistan. But they do talk and will admit that this did happen. This is something that even they admit. A 2000s movie in the Middle East about a Mesopotamian vampire. I don't remember hearing about that one. Do you remember its name, Sean? Middle Eastern vampire. I know that there are. I know the Middle East has their own version of vampires. Every culture has their own version of a vampire. But anyway. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to recover from the usual horribleness that is allergies in this time of year. I picked a great time to... Bishop? What are you doing over there? This is why you stay in the corner. Anyway, sorry guys, we're getting off track. Back to my point. This legend is very strange because the US government just straight up admits that it happened. They don't even try to cover this up or lie about it, which is scary actually if you think about it. Okay. He doesn't remember what it's called. Anyway, though. So, in 1997, a group of Marines... was it Marines or Army? I didn't write that part down. Anyway, some U.S. forces found this cave. Now, just a cave by itself in Vietnam, who gives a damn, right? I mean, you know how many caves there are? The thing with this cave is that it had a profound putrid smell. And a lot of the soldiers speculated that it must be being used for something. Maybe it was being used by the enemies for like dumping something or hiding bodies. It could even have been that. And so, because they weren't going to just charge into a stinking cave, they staked it out. And it was about, I want to say, the report said it was around 2 or 3 a.m. It was just before the sky started to lighten up. It was just in the later AMs. 2 large 7-foot-tall figures were seen coming out of the cave. Now, what's interesting is that they first, according to the report, they exited the cave crawling on the ground. But then they stood up, and they were 7 foot tall, and the soldiers shined lights on them to see who or what they were, and they were lizards. I don't mean they were just like bald people. No, they were lizards with snouts and tails. They were described as looking kind of like monitor lizards that just rose up and were standing on their back legs, and they stood 7 feet tall. Now, what's interesting, because to be fair, yes, monitor lizards can actually rise up, can rear up onto their back legs. They'll kind of sumo wrestle almost with each other. I think it's monitor lizards that do that. Yeah, that's monitors. But anyway, monitor lizards aren't 7 foot tall when they rise up on their back legs. And in true U.S. Armed Forces fashion, the answer was open fire. Remember the Battle of L.A., boys and girls? U.S. Army isn't profound thinkers and scholars. Those guys will light you up, and then they will think about it and maybe apologize to your bullet-ridden corpse. Okay, so don't mess with don't mess with them. I don't care if it's Navy, Army, Marines, Air Force. Heck, I wouldn't even poke fun at the Coast Guard. I don't want to get my butt kicked. I don't understand why people make fun of the Coast Guard in the first damn place. I don't want to make fun of the people that could make you disappear out in the ocean. It's like ticking off the Boy Scouts. What the hell is wrong with you? Anyway, supposedly they opened fire on these lizards that were 7 foot tall and standing up on their back legs. And they actually confirmed that they hit them several times. The creatures hissed and ran back into the cave. And the soldiers basically decided to stay their ground because they were afraid, well, they could lead us into an ambush or something inside the cave, so we're going to wait out here. Because as far as the soldiers knew, there was only one way in or out. So they just waited for a couple of hours, and nothing moved around the entrance of the cave, so they've decided with sunlight, okay, we'll go towards the cave. And they found blood. So they shot them. They hit the monsters, or whatever the hell they were, several times, and there was actually blood on the ground. It looked like one of them maybe smeared some on the wall of the cave as they were retreating, possibly. But, oh, your brother was in the Coast Guard, Mr. Bishop. A diver?
Antarctica.
Oh, in the Antarctic. Okay. The bishop was just pointing down, and I was like, oh, he was a diver. No, he meant down as in south. He was in Antarctica. That's right. You mentioned that. You did mention Antarctica one time, that your family served in Antarctica. Well, for the record, Mr. Bishop, we do thank your brother for his service. There's no such thing as an irrelevant position in the military. Every job needs to be done. Usually, actually, what was the joke? Nobody has one job in the Army, I think it's the term. He has to be... Oh, Mr. Bishop has to go be right back. Okay, well, we'll be here. Don't worry. But anyway, and they actually took... anyway, so they knew they hit these creatures. The creatures bled. Well, supposedly they actually took the blood as samples, and there was no identification of the creature's DNA structure. Hello, Jesus! Jesus in the chat, our dear friend who is trapped in some kind of weird time vortex in West Virginia, maybe possessed by a demon or abducted by aliens. We're not sure what happened to him this week, but good to see you can send a message, buddy. Anyway, though, so they knew that they hit something. They took the blood samples, and there was no match with anything. They tried running it against every creature that they had in these databases, and that blood, whatever bled out there, was like nothing we had ever encountered officially. And what's interesting is that the U.S. government itself, they admitted, this happened. There were soldiers in Vietnam who found a cave. They decided to investigate it because it had a foul odor coming from it. And after staking it out in the early AM hours, 2 7-foot-tall reptilian creatures emerged from the cave, and they shot at them. And personally, this blows my mind. It's like, really? You'll tell us that? And no one bats an eye. No one brings it up. What is wrong with you people? There's 7-foot-tall lizards in Vietnam that can stand upright. No, we're not going to talk about that. No, did you see the latest video that's trending on TikTok? Boy, howdy. I'm going to need to bust out my tinfoil hat or something, man, because, like, my mind is just going like, wait a second, isn't TikTok from China? The country that's, like, right next to Vietnam where these 7-foot-tall lizards are? Tell you, man, it's all connected. I'm just going to wait and see if the stream goes down now because we mentioned one of the things you're not supposed to talk about. Oopsie. No, we seem to be doing okay. I'm just... Ah, crud. Choopy, you're not funny. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, we're back. Oh, God damn it! Choopy, everyone. Our beloved goat blood drinking technician. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. 7-foot tall lizards that the U.S. government admits exist. Yeah, that's a thing. But anyway, we're gonna leave that behind before we go and get turned off. Oh, welcome back, Mr. Bishop. Your brother was an icebreaker, and he was in both of the poles. So he was in Antarctica and what's the north one? Antarctica and just the Arctic. The Arctic, excuse me. Wow. I keep saying we'd be dangerous if we were professional and actually Soul Calibur, but real. Hey, don't talk trash, man. Soul Calibur used to be really freaking cool. The last ones weren't so great, I'll give you that, but I liked the franchise overall. Water monitors can get up to 10 feet long and walk upright. Water monitors, okay. And they're in Nam, you say? So could that be what they saw? Well, wait, no. Okay, if they were water monitors, then why didn't the blood come back as being a water monitor? Why wasn't there a match? I mean, I'll give you the water monitors are pretty gnarly looking SOBs. I mean, all monitor lizards. I like monitor lizards. They're cool. Yeah, they can get to, what is that saying? 8 to 10 feet long? Something like that? My God. The bishop is just looking up pictures of these creatures, and these are the Vietnamese water monitors. Good boogly moogly. Native to Southeast Asia? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I could see it. There it is. Look at the size of this bloody thing. Look at it. And I love how is that a person it's hugging? Yeah, that's a First of all, why on earth would you hug that thing? Second of all, why on earth would you be near that thing? Is it more... Actually, you know what? No, Sean brings a good question. What's worse? Shooting regular animals that were just minding their own business in a cave? Or the idea that the U.S. government would order its soldiers to shoot a sentient race like lizard people on sight? What's worse? I don't know. I guess agree. Poor lizards. I mean, they weren't doing anything. They literally just came out of a cave. How would you like to see that in the dark? I wouldn't want to see it in the light. Friend-shaped. Oh. Have at it, Sean. Have at it. You go be friends with that creature. Yeah. Not hugging that. You behave yourself. Oh, God! There is no limit to the stuffed animals that... Go play with those cactuses over there. That the bishop has to throw at me. But anyway, we've talked... I think we talked enough about the Vietnam War. There are other wars to talk about. This is another legend that the bishop actually told me about and was really excited for. Old Green Eyes, or Old Green Eyes, as some people call him. All lizards are all friends. Um. Anyway, so old Green Eyes is he really is kind of a thing. Some people say it's a demon. Some people say it's an alien. Hold on a second. The period of knowledge. Anyway, old Green Eyes. There's a lot of arguments about what exactly it is. So it's a creature that was seen just after the Battle of Chickamauga. How do you pronounce this?
Chickamauga.
Chickamauga. The Battle of Chickamauga, which is like I think the second most bloody incident. It was like it was like second only to the Battle of God damn it, what was it called? What was the most bloody? Gettysburg. Thank you. Yeah, one of the nastiest. Lots and lots and lots of casualties, I should say. And supposedly the night after the battle, I mean, there were still bodies littered all over the place. I mean, it was really horrible. This big, ghoulish creature was seen. It was described as having kind of a fat, bulbous body. Excuse me. A grayish skin. Very long arms. And a disformed face full of fangs that actually were so big they didn't fit in the thing's mouth. But the big thing that it's known for, as its name implies, is it has these huge green glowing eyes. Thus the name Big Old Green Eyes. Yeah, there's one of our dramatizations of the creature. That's pretty much what most people actually claim it looks like. That's all they see of it. And it's been seen since the battle. It hangs out in that area. Some people claim that it's a manifestation of all the suffering that happened, because actually the tragic truth is that a lot of the men who died in that battle didn't just drop dead. They were shot or somehow wounded, and most of them actually bled to death very slowly. It was a very horrible thing to go through. Anyway, some people say that it was a demon who was attracted to the place because of, again, all the pain and suffering. Some stories claim that it was wandering around the battlefield, like harvesting corpses, like picking up corpses and like eating them, or dragging them away into brush and stuff like that. A couple times, I thought the stream went down. Someday it's going to happen. Anyway, though, again, it was seen actually several times since then. It stays in that area where the battle was. It like haunts that little region. And again, it kind of had a surge in the 70s and the 80s, actually, where more stories came up about it. Specifically, there was one person who claimed that they saw it and that Green Eyes actually charged them. They were doing an investigation in the area, I guess, and they saw the creature, and the creature saw them, and it came running at them. But when the lights from a car shined on it, it just disappeared. It was gone. When the light was shined on it, it wasn't there anymore. Other stories say that, I was there and I saw it, and when I shined a light on it, it screamed and ran away. So whatever it is, it doesn't seem to like the light, which would actually make sense. It has these gigantic eyes. A lot of people say it's probably some kind of animal that's very photosensitive. So yeah, with big eyes like that, you wouldn't want light shined at you. I mean, look how small the human eye is. I mean, you don't want light shined in your face, do you? Some people try to say it's some kind of a bald bear, but that doesn't quite make sense to me, because one, a bear's teeth don't jet out of their mouth. And while it's true, yes, bears, I think bears reflect light with their eyes. I've never seen. Actually, now that I think about it. Chat, what do you guys think? Does anyone know, do bears' eyes reflect light? Because again, the big thing about this creature is that it's got these big green glowing eyes. And some animals' eyes do reflect light, giving the appearance of having glowing eyes. But does a bear? Because that's the thing everyone says it is. It has to be like a bald bear, some kind of bear with mange or something. Yes, their eyes are reflective. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, that's okay. There's a few problems, though. One, bears can rise up onto their back legs, but they almost never walk on their back legs. And this creature is bipedal. Also, bears don't use their front paws to pick up things. And supposedly, old Green Eyes was literally just picking up corpses off the ground. Oh, Tara, you've been there? Really? You never... I don't remember you mentioning that. Were you there at night or in the daytime? Because supposedly it only appears at night. Again, it doesn't like light, so it stays hidden. It only comes out when it's dark. Anyway, while my sister replies to that. Yeah, supposedly a lot of people claim that it's some kind of a manifestation of human suffering. Some people say it's a demon. The attempted explanation is that it's a bear with mange. You ever notice that real quick? I'm sorry, I know every segment I go into some kind of tangent about something else, I know. But you ever notice that? In the past few years, maybe the past decade or so, every cryptid is just something with mange. Chupacabra? Oh, no, that's a coyote with mange. Old Green Eyes? Oh, no, that's a bear with mange. Bigfoot? It could be an orangutan with mange. Seriously, mange does not turn you into a freaking monster. I had a dog with mange, and she was perfectly... Okay, she was batshit crazy, I admit, but she didn't look like a goddamn demon. My condolences to everyone that is wearing headphones listening to this. Oh, Mr. Bishop is in the chat listing off the most bloody battles in America. Well, the point is that it was still a nasty one. Chickamauga was a really nasty one, and supposedly the battlefield it was fought over, it has this strange monster, and it was originally seen the night after the battle, going through and just picking up corpses. Oh, okay. Big Mange trying to take credit for everything. Yeah, it's all connected. It's all interconnected. Big Mange is trying to keep the truth from you. They don't want you to know about Old Green Eyes and the Chupacabra. By the way, I'm sorry, I'm just going to bring this up now. When the hell did anyone authorize the Chupacabra to go from being a little green reptilian bipedal creature into a coyote in the first freaking place? I wasn't going to do this. This is one of the reasons that I actually have not talked about the Chupacabra. Because of the fact I know I'm going to go on this tirade. I hate whenever someone sits there and brings up mange. It's not freaking mange, okay? Mange means your hair falls out and there's usually discoloration of the skin. It does not turn you into 10... It doesn't make you grow 10 feet freaking tall or make you have supernatural powers, okay? It's a skin condition. It's like mange is the disease equivalent of skinwalkers. Everything's a skinwalker, apparently. And it's like, no, stop it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Sean actually is bringing up a good point. Chupacabras used to have like quills and spikes and stuff. Some said they had feathers. I've heard some with feathers. And now suddenly they're coyotes with mange? Like hell they are!
I'm actually searching for this original picture, and it's really hard to find like their.
Oh yeah, and of course, conveniently enough, when you try and actually look up pictures of the chupacabra and how they were described, like in the 90s and early 2000s, now it's hard to find, because all they want to show you is pictures of freaking coyotes with mange. There you go. There it is. The original chupacabra. That is not, and I repeat, not a coyote with mange. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's not a freaking coyote. It kind of looks like a pit bull almost. But no, that is not mange, okay? Can snakes get mange? That could explain the bull eater. Yeah, no. Mange does not make you turn into a freaking kaiju. Friend-shaped. The chupacabra is friend-shaped, according to Sean. Anyway, though. Back to my point. Old Green Eyes is a monster that was seen at the end of one of... and Mr. Bishop actually brought up a good point. War was a bloody, bloody affair back in the day. Weapons were way less sophisticated, far more brutish, and quite frankly, I mean, there's arguments about modern weapons being terrifying and stuff. I don't know, man. There's a certain level of savagery needed to use a musket and a bayonet and stuff like that. There's a certain level you have to be willing to go down into the darkness to use a weapon like that. That being said, yeah, I mean, drone strikes are also terrifying in their own way, but I'm talking about the men in battle, not, you know, a raccoon. No, that. Stop blaming it on mange. It's not mange. Ugh. I'm gonna go to bed, wake up screaming in the mange. It's not. Okay, just like not every drunk or stoned person you see on the street is a freaking skinwalker. Not every cryptid is just something with mange. We don't know what Old Green Eyes actually is. Okay, I don't care how bad of a case of mange a bear has. Bears do not disappear when you shine light on them. I don't care how sick they are. What was that famous line from Dusk Till Dawn? I don't care how crazy they are. Psychos don't blow up in sunlight. By the way, great movie. I love Dusk Till Dawn. That's one that might. I know it's not actually a Tarantino film. He's in it, I think, though. Still, I think it's my favorite one from him. He wrote it. That's right. Anyway, though. Yeah, I don't buy the whole bear with mange story. That doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. It doesn't walk or act like a bear in any of the stories. The only thing that's the same is about... Yeah, I could see someone looking at a bear with mange and saying it looks kind of like a fat, ghoulish-looking human. Sure, okay, I could see that. Yeah, and on top of that, bears are friends. They're like bats. They're not monsters. Anyway, though. But, and besides, let's be honest here. We're talking about monsters in war. Let's be cliched and let's be honest here. The real monster is humans. The real monsters, the truly terrifying creatures are humans. What humans are willing to do to each other. Again, I'm not going to get into the morality or right or wrong of war. The fact of the matter is, like I said, you have to go to a very dark place. I don't care how righteous or heroic you are. War, by definition, is embracing the darkness. It is accepting savagery. Period. I don't care if you're fighting for a good cause. And a great example of just how monstrous humans can be is World War I and II. We're going to finish this up, actually, with a story that I actually only learned about today. This sounds so bizarre, it could only come from the World Wars. You ever notice that? Like, the World Wars are where everything goes absolutely insane. I mean, I was actually going to talk about the Nazi wonder weapons, as they called them, like the Glocker and stuff like that. Oh, real quick, yeah, the Gremlins. See, here's the problem with Gremlins, and the reason that I wasn't planning to talk about them so much is that they were more of a ghost story. As far as I know, there aren't any photographs or real accounts of people seeing a gremlin. It was just a story they told about those evil gremlins that were fighting and serving Germany. The German gremlins. They were a story told during the First and Second World War. They're a mischievous, evil little spirit that makes machines break. And they were supposedly an absolute blight on the Allied forces' planes. The Twilight Zone actually did an episode of them about a gremlin. Although it's funny because they couldn't really get an account of what does a gremlin look like. Because, again, there's no sightings or photos or anything like that of them. So so in the Twilight Zone episode, they literally just put a guy in a monkey suit. the gremlin was this big ape-looking creature, like a Bigfoot. Yes, William Shatner was in that episode. There's something on the wing. Even though he didn't talk like that. If I'm not mistaken, he had a cameo in the Twilight Zone movie, actually, because they mentioned that episode. But anyway, yeah, gremlins are kind of weird. They're more of a ghost story than a cryptid, because again, there's nothing, there's no evidence of them. They're just a story that was told. But something that we do know about from World War I is what was called the Hounds of Mons. 2.5 foot tall and very, very fast. Chet, your grandfather saw a gremlin? He actually saw one? 2.5 foot tall and very fast. Were they like little people, like fae folk? Or were they like animals? Like, did he go into detail about them? Thank you for the clarification, Bishop, because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm more familiar with the band. But anyway, like I said, we're going to, because we are getting pretty close to our normal wrap-up time, we're going to talk about this last one, which I, again, only learned about today, actually. The Hounds of Mons. It was in, let me see here real quick. 1914. So the First World War. There was a patrol team of Brits that were moving along the front. And they claimed that in the dark, they were attacked by something. Now, the story claims that there were 4 soldiers on this patrol team, and only one of them actually made it back to the safety of his trench with the other Brits. And so they regrouped, and they sent a second team out to find the fallen 3 soldiers, and they found them. But they found signs that they had been dragged along the ground, and they had bite wounds around their neck and shoulders. Now, unfortunately, necessity didn't really give much chance for a proper investigation. They just chalked it up to the savagery of the German soldiers. And, tragically, 3 Brits were killed. What's interesting is that several years later, in the riot of Berlin near the end of the First World War, There was a German scientist by the name of, I'm going to try and pronounce this right, but I almost guarantee I'm going to get it wrong. Dr. Hutschmuller. Hutschmuller, I think is how you pronounce it. Some stories claim that he was killed in the riot. Others claim that he figured the jig was up, and so he committed suicide, actually. But in either case, his body was found dead, and he had these journals. And when I mentioned how, humans are the truly horrifying monsters of war, this journal kind of was a confirmation of it. Apparently, he had been doing experiments on dogs. And in his journals, he claimed that he actually surgically augmented dogs as well as transplanted human brains into dogs, basically making literal dog soldiers. The Foo Fighters were balls of light. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the Foo Fighters. I'll have to look into that one. Maybe we can talk about them in another episode. But no, supposedly, according to the journals, that this Dr. Hutschmuller, Hochmuller, Hutschmuller, I think is how you would pronounce it. I need to be careful. If I say his name one more time, his ghost might show up like Beetlejuice or something. But no, he wrote multiple journals, apparently under the funding and orders of the German government in World War I. This guy apparently was trying to literally make dog-based weapons, surgically augmenting them, making them bigger, stronger, things like that. Again, the big one was putting a human brain inside a dog's skull, and his journals claimed they were successful. He claimed he had several that he could command and control. And it's interesting because in the journal he even mentions a test run where his dogs attacked and killed 3 British soldiers that were patrolling the front lines. But one escaped. Just like the incident in 1914. Dog Soldiers was an awesome movie, by the way. I love that movie. It was about I don't know if it was World War II, but it was about werewolves. Yeah. It's funny actually because I was talking with at my day job with someone about how irony of ironies, a lot of our modern medicine actually is reverse engineered from things we learned from the German and Japanese scientists of World War I and II. It is kind of ironic to think about those horrible factions who were responsible for so much death and tragedy. Ironically enough, because of them, we've saved probably by now millions of lives. I think it was the Germans, their research into hypothermia. While yes, they were cruel and vicious and monstrous, I agree. It's bizarre that we were able to take that knowledge, that information that they did, and turn it around and use it for good. It's still horrible and tragic to think about, but yeah, Chet's still talking about the gremlins. They move in groups of 3 or 4 and can quickly dismantle a jeep and... Wow. And I can't even get food delivered from up the street in a convenient time. But these gremlins in a team of 3 or 4 can strip a car. See, that's the kind of work ethic you need, man. Seriously, let's see some hustle. But anyway, back to Hutchmuller's research. It's weird because, I mean, he wrote multiple journals writing out in detail what he did, and he claimed he was successful. He claimed he had several of these monstrous Frankenstein dog things, and worse yet, he could control them. He could actually make them do what he wanted. Yeah, such is war. Yeah, there's what's that expression? The first casualty of any war is innocence, I think is the expression. What was that? Was from a movie. Wasn't that Platoon? I don't know. But I know it's a movie quote. But anyway, back to my point. He claimed that he had them and he controlled them. But where did they go? Hutchmuller was found in Berlin after a riot. Again, when I was looking at it, there was contradictions. Some people say that he killed himself. Other people say he was actually murdered by rioters. But his journals don't explain what happened to these dogs he created. Did he destroy them? Did he release them? Are they still around? I don't know. How long does a Frankenstein dog live? Because, I mean, if they were normal dogs, they wouldn't be around anymore. I mean, by sheer virtue of time. But, like, how long does a Clan Mulder version of Fido stick around? They move and blur. Okay. I think it's kind of funny. I'm talking about these German mad scientist dogs, and Chet meanwhile is just giving lessons about gremlins. And it's like, you know, I'm not endorsing it, but I will acknowledge when it comes to horrifying things, boy howdy, it's hard to beat those Germans. Not that you would want to, I think. I don't think you want to be as bad as the World War Germans. You know, come to think of it, you guys, nah, they're good dogs. Nah, they're good. They're good. But yeah, no. I mean, now, was Hutchmuller actually successful in putting a human brain into the brains of dogs, or surgically augmenting them into monsters? I mean, there's a part of me who wants to say no, but I will admit, I don't know how much of that is no, it's not possible, and how much of it is no, I really hope he wasn't successful. Because, I mean, that just sounds horrible. I mean, I'm trying to picture in my head what would that even look like, and I'm not liking what I see here. But no, he claimed that he was successful, and his journals just end. He never documented what he did with the dogs or what became of them. He just said he had several of them, and he could control them. And then he was found dead. If I'm not mistaken, he was shot. And some people say he shot himself. Other people say he was shot. But for the record, he wasn't like mauled or ripped apart by something. That'd be a fitting end. A mad scientist creates a team of monster dogs, and then they rip him to shreds. Make a note of that, actually. We might have to revisit that story in the Vagrancy horror, actually. But no, this was a real-world Dr. Frankenstein. And, I mean, the mad writings of some scientist who died in a riot probably wouldn't mean much, but it's really creepy that his journal mentions, in 1914, he sicked his dogs on this group of British soldiers, and it correlates with what actually happened. There was a team of 4 British soldiers patrolling the front who were attacked by creatures. They didn't know what they were, and they had a bunch of bite marks around the neck and shoulders, and they looked like they had been dragged. Hutchmuller's journal describes sicking his dogs on a group of 4 British soldiers on the front, and that he tried to recover 3 of their bodies to use in more of his experiments. But apparently he had to call his dogs back because more soldiers were coming. And it's really creepy how there's a correlation there. I mean, I suppose to be fair, he could have heard about the British soldiers being attacked, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, that's an elaborate hoax or prank on his part, especially if he killed himself. But yeah, the Hounds of Mons are a very real story, and there's no real explanation for them. But wow, time flies, isn't it? Holy cow! Yeah, we're looking about the end of our normal night. Wait. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, I thought the bishop was something was wrong. Yeah, Chet, that's what I was saying, Chet. See, me personally, I admit I'm a very dark person, but in a weird way, there's something beautiful about that we were able to take these horrible things that these men and women did. The German and Japanese human experimentations were truly monsters. There's no way to really describe just how horrible that the things they did. And then we, the Allied forces, we came along, we found their journals, we found their laboratories, and we completely turned all their stuff on their heads. I've always kind of wondered, how many of those SS officers would have, worked at Auschwitz if they knew that, 100 years or so later, the things they did would be actually used to save lives. It's like, yeah, I don't know. There's something triumphant about that we could make something good out of something so horrible and evil. And once again, I'm gonna die on this hill. There is such a thing as good and evil. It's not usually that simple, I'll give you that. But no, there is such a thing as good and evil. There is such a thing as right and wrong. And I personally think that it's a triumph of humanity that, we can take the nightmarish experiments and procedures that were done in those wars and turn them around and use them to save countless lives. That's a triumph in my opinion. But yeah, that's all I really have prepared tonight. Yeah, I'll have to look up the Foo Fighters, and maybe we can talk about Gremlins in the future. Not the band. But no, because again, I'm not too familiar with it. Actually, before we sign off, we'll end on a high note. There's stories of the Hounds of Mons. There's also a story I found called the Angels of Mons. Supposedly, there were some British soldiers that were actually pinned down, and German forces were advancing on them. And they claim that when there was no hope, they were trapped, they were cut off, this group of men with bow and arrows, armed with bow and arrows, dressed in medieval clothing, just showed up over a hill and started unleashing volleys of arrows on the Germans. Oh, my. I had a famine. Just unleashed a volley of arrows and forced the Germans to fall back, and then they just disappeared. And so they became known as the Angels of Mons. Yeah, no, famine's good. Don't worry, I'm not going to get rid of you. But anyway, chat. Well, see, chat, I have to state that they can have their opinion, just like I can have my opinion. Win, lose, or draw, no. Human experimentation, animal experimentation like that, no. I'm sorry. This is a gut thing, and I'm willing to die on this hill. You can have your opinion. No, that's not good. That's not okay. That is evil. It is monstrous, and there's a reason that we stood up and put it down. Period. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am Kristoff N. We have our... Oh, yes. I got my dear sweet dogs, Famine and Gluttony, here. We have the bishop up in the corner. Thank you all for coming here. If there's any soldiers who hear this, thank you for your service. And don't forget, we have a new episode of the Vagrancy Horror up today, Operation Sandbar. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Probably one of my favorite episodes. It was a lot of fun to do. I don't know if Jeebus is still in the crowd. Jeebus was actually in it, and he does a phenomenal job. You're gonna love him when you hear him. But thank you once again, everyone. Thank you, all the soldiers who might be hearing this. Next week, we are going to be talking about comic books. Actually, I have an influx of indie horror and adventure comic books, and I decided we're going to talk about that. We're going to try and see if we can get some special guests, actually. We'll be having an early start time. And yeah, we'll see you then. And as always, keep checking the shadows.